Dearest gentle reader, you're welcome to today's episode of Nerdy Corner. Today we'll be discussing one of the works of the first female Nigerian author to be published. Scratch that. The first African female writer to be published. Yes, can you guess who that is? Flora Nwapa. Today we'll be discussing her book titled Efuru. Efuru was published in 1966, meaning that next year, 2026, this book will be 60 years old. I mean, it can be classified as a classic, right? 60 years. You know what 60 years is? 60 years old. That's what this book will be next year. The first time I read this book, I was in primary 6. A classmate of mine had it and I was interested in it. This was my introduction into African writing. You know, we had things fall apart at home, no longer at ease, arrow of God. But for some reason, my interest wasn't piked because I was more interested in the Goosebumps, the John Grishams, the Enid Blytons. Those were my kind of books at the time until I read this book. This was my initiation into African Writers series. And since then, I haven't looked back. No, I haven't. Now, let's discuss the book Efuru. Imagine choosing love and your husband disappears. That's just the beginning of Efuru's story. She chose herself in a world that kept choosing for her, and that's why Efuru is that girl. What happens when a woman blessed by the goddess of wealth is denied the one thing society values most? A child. Efuru answers loudly. Efuru said marriage is not a career way before it became a Twitter or TikTok trend. A beautiful woman, 2 marriages, 0 apologies. Let's talk about Efuru. Now, the book was set in the early colonial times. The white people had come to Igbo land and were still trying to convert, but there were still people holding on strongly to our tradition. Yes, some of them sent their children to school to go and learn the ways of the white people, but we still held on to our traditional worship and all of those during the time this book was written. Efuru was her name. She was a remarkable woman. It was not only that she came from a distinguished family, she was distinguished herself. Her husband was not known and people wondered why she married him. It was after the festival in which young men and young women looked for wives and husbands that Efuru first met Adizwa. Adizwa asked her to marry him and she agreed. But what about the dowry? She asked. You will come to me on Nkwo Day. Every place will be quiet that day being a market day. Take a few clothes with you and come to me. We shall talk about the dowry after. Efuru agreed and went home feeling very happy and light. Now, the next day she packed her things and moved in with him. Eventually, they were able to raise enough money. Of course, she was blessed. The female goddess Ohamiri had blessed her, so she was blessed. Anything she touched yielded profit. So in no time, they were able to raise the money and go and do things the proper way by paying her bride price. But okay, she also conceived a child. But shortly after, in I think about her 4th year, her daughter died. Her husband was nowhere to be found. By then, he had run off with another woman. Several messages were sent to him to come and bury his child, but he never came back. So Efuru remained in the compound for about a year or 2 and decided that she had had enough and went back to her father's house. Did she give marriage a second chance? Yes, she did. She met another man in Ebiri. Gilbert was his English name. They had a good relationship. He loved her, she loved him, and they got married. After some years into the marriage, she realized she couldn't conceive. So she married in another girl, a younger girl, so that they could continue the family lineage. And she loved that child like her own because the girl had a baby boy and Efuru loved that boy like her own, which is not unheard of in Igbo culture, you know. So they lived fairly well. Enebiri disappeared for months. After a while, Efuru lost her dad. Enebiri was nowhere to be found. Messages were sent. Nobody could trace him. And then after some time, he returned, but he never told his wife what happened to him. She heard it outside that he was jailed. She confronted him, asking if it was true. He said yes. But Efuru was so happy. In her heart of hearts, she was just happy that her husband was back. She didn't even bother with the details of why he was sent to jail in the first place. And they continued their marriage until she took ill. Now, the illness was so grave that several Dibias were consulted, but nobody could procure a cure for her. Then gossip started, and she was accused of adultery and was told that she would die if she didn't confess it. And guess who broke the news to her? Her own husband. Who believed the gossip anyways? Efuru was disappointed. She was hurt. This was a husband she stood by. This was a husband she covered for when he was in jail. She never told a soul that her husband was in jail, even after finding out. And then here he was accusing her. The marriage did not survive after that accusation. She decided she was better off alone, you know. So yes, it's about a woman who chose herself regardless of what society said. In a society where a woman's pride is tied to her husband, a woman's pride is tied to the number of children she has, Efuru broke those ceilings, or she broke those expectations. She did not live up to them. Because why stay in a marriage if your own husband is accusing you of something that you did not do? And it speaks about her character. Her helper, her maid, you know, even without flinching, stood up for her and said, no way, my mother is not an adulteress. People stood up for her, regardless of what every other person was saying. There were people in her inner circle that knew her better and vouched for her. Now it spoke so much of her character, which makes me wonder, what kind of a person am I? Can people vouch for me? Can I vouch for other people? Can I swear an oath, in quotes? Of course, I'm not asking us to swear, but basically based on what we got from this book, can I swear an oath on behalf of someone that this person's character is flawless and stick to it? These are the questions that came to mind in this book. Now, but for me, some of the things that touched me were the direct translations of the Igbo language. If someone asks you now, what's the meaning of kachifo? You would say it's good night. But kachifo is not good night. It is let the day break. You know, so there were so many instances where the Igbo language was literally translated to English, and it went so well. I loved it. I loved reading about it. And then we had other traditions, superstitions, and then those sacrificing food items, adjunctions, and all that. We saw them here. Female circumcision. Oh, that had me cringing, because what? Female circumcision, yes. We also had inheritance of wives. When a man dies, his son inherits his wives, you know. So those were also talked about in this book. And then there was singing Igbo songs to children. That one struck a nerve, because my mom, I have 3 children, so anytime my mom comes for Omugo, she makes sure that each of these children of mine have songs that are attached to them. In fact, when they talk to her, she still sings it to them. So yes, it reminded me of our tradition of gathering in the moonlight, hearing stories and dancing. You know, it was a beautiful book. It is a beautiful book. And it's about a woman breaking boundaries. Yes, we still have women breaking boundaries today. I mean, take for instance the MD of Zenith Bank. She's the first female CEO of Zenith Bank. So these are women continue to inspire us. Maybe Flora Mapa was a feminist. She's late now. Maybe she was a feminist. But this book, and this is even way before the trend of social media, the trend of marriage is not a career. This is way before all of that. This was written in 1966. Where were you in 1966? This book was written then, and it addresses some of these questions that we still ask today. Have you read Efuru? If you have, what did you like about the book? Let's discuss in the comments section. See you next time. Bye.